Hi, just want to make a quick, lightly edited video regarding a very recent and personally very exciting news about a tiny Japanese indie video game company that I loved since I was a kid. I have just recently received news from a Reddit post, oddly, that Nintendo is establishing an official presence in Indonesia, my home country. Akhirnya UMKM Jepang tukang bikin game resmi ke Indonesia. And I couldn't be more proud and happier to be an Indonesian. It only took them nearly 11 months since they expanded to the Southeast Asian region to notice the big elephant in the room, and nearly 17 years after Sony officially sold the PlayStation 3 in the Indonesian market. August 11th, 2026, at the St. Regis Hotel in Kuningan, South Jakarta, Nintendo Singapore Executive Officer Takeuchi Jiro-san announced that they will officially launch both the first generation Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2 in Indonesia by December 2026. That's right, they're launching a 9-year-old console like it's new. This is all real. If you type in nintendo.com/ID on your browser, it'll take you to this very simple landing page that has an image of somewhere near Bundaran HI with a Mario plaster to it, product, and a text that says, "Perkenalkan, kami Nintendo. Akan hadir Desember 2026, which just translates to, "Greetings, we're Nintendo. Will arrive December 2026. Along with that is a link that takes you to the Nintendo Southeast Asia Facebook page. But this whole Nintendo in Indonesia thing doesn't necessarily mean they'll establish a new entity here. No. Instead, Nintendo Singapore will be overseeing the Indonesian market, and a company called PT Nusantara Interaktif Niaga, owned by the Salim family, will be an official Nintendo distributor for Indonesia. This just means that there will be a more official way of obtaining a Nintendo product rather than having to deal with customs or getting them through importers or third parties. Unfortunately for me, it doesn't seem that Nintendo will be planning to launch an official Nintendo eShop for the Indonesian region. Whether if they will adjust their prices or make the eShop available, we'll just have to wait and see how it'll play in the long run. Now, what does this mean for you, dear non-Southeast Asian viewers watching this video? Why should you care about Nintendo officially releasing their products in a country mostly run by corrupt overlords? Personally, I think it's a great way for Indonesians to get to know more about Nintendo and their amazing games, and for Nintendo to reap more official sales for the first generation Nintendo Switch. Of course, later on, Sony would still somehow find more mysterious sales on the PS2. Nintendo in Indonesia has never had a very vocal presence here. Most may only know Pokemon, Mario, Zelda, and more recently, Tomodachi Life. Gaming in Indonesia is mostly dominated by the mobile and PC market, low-quality Roblox slop, and Sony monopolizing in the console space. PlayStation just has a far more larger install base here compared to Nintendo and Xbox, so in terms of recognition, most Indonesians would mention PlayStation first in terms of console gaming, and they would more likely mention games on PlayStation more than on Nintendo, like Story of Seasons, formerly known as Harvest Moon, JRPGs like Final Fantasy, Chrono Cross, and Dragon Quest, and your average run-of-the-mill soccer games. Looking on Twitter, yes, I know, quite unfortunate that I have a Twitter account I am never calling it X. Searching Nintendo Indonesia and skipping some engagement bait posts will bring up a post from Chris Antoni and his indie game company Toge Productions. I know him for having their 3 Nintendo Switch dev kits got held on by our wonderful Indonesian customs. Anyway, snooping through their recent posts, it also looks like Nintendo had a dedicated section for Indonesian-made games, and quite conveniently, 2 of their games were shown, which I think is really cool and neat. It makes me feel proud as an Indonesian seeing locally made games being on a Nintendo console. The CEO of Salim Group on Instagram posted some footage of the business conference. This one's showcasing Mario Kart World, this one's showing Pokemon Let's Go games, Nintendo Switch Sports, Mario Tennis, and Breath of the Wild. On a more random side of things, it'd be interesting to see how Nintendo will handle the more illegal side of things. A lot of game stores here in places like Mangga Dua sells modded consoles as recent as the Nintendo Switch OLED, often bundled with a lot of pirated games. And whatever your view is on pirating Nintendo games being morally ethical or not, I think it'll be a topic worth diving into at a later time. Of course, I don't advocate for piracy, but with Nintendo's history of being pretty somewhat anti-consumer, I really don't know how I should position myself. Personally, I pirate if I want to try a game out or if I want to play a game that has a price tag that is way out of my reach. Of course, in the end, I would usually buy the games out of my passion for the art of video games and video game development. Whether if they deserve my money or not is entirely up to my own judgment. Oh I got sidetracked there. So that's all I got for this personally very exciting news. Nintendo recognizing Indonesia is definitely not on my 2026 bingo card, and as a Nintendo fan, or a sucker for some of you who thinks Nintendo is a sin in the video game space. I am glad that they are finally officially bringing Nintendo consoles and games to this silly country I live in. And yes, to those asking, I am still not finished on the long-form video that I'm working on. I am so sorry on that. Anyway, I can't wait to see how Nintendo will perform in Indonesia. Will they localize pricing? Will they run ads in here? Will they open support for Nintendo eShop? Will they provide official Indonesian translations for games? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And by now you have officially wasted more than 6 minutes of your time listening to a random Indonesian on the internet talking about a small Japanese video game company officially selling their product to an audience who only knows PlayStation, Pokemon, and Mario. I am not sorry on that, and I don't regret it. And that's about it, really.